I thought I was having a stroke. I lost vision in my left eye. I lost feeling in my arm. I ended up getting admitted to the hospital and they put me in emergency. My blood pressure was super high. I was still shaking. I still had loss of vision. And I was like, I'm like, something's really wrong. When I left, he literally told me, you need just to manage your stress. You're perfectly healthy. I literally thought I was going crazy. I ended up seeing our provider and I said, I need to run my labs again, like immediately. We need to find out what's wrong. Something's really wrong. And she goes, Randee, you're in perimenopause. I feel like on top of the world. I never want to lose the way I feel now. I never want to lose her again because I feel so excited and alive. You really don't have to go through this alone. And there's a lot of help and a lot of support. I have a lot to say about the last, honestly, 4 years, but what's happened in the last 6 months, what has really transformed has been really profound for myself personally. And I should take a deep breath because I have to ride kind of this emotional wave of sorts because I have got a lot of information for myself in the last like really condensed frame of time. But when I look back at the last 4 years and the amount of stress I had, I've had symptoms even then and I didn't know it going into perimenopause, premenopause, all those things. And the fascinating thing is I'm in the space of hormones. That's what our business does. And I honestly didn't even know I was in that phase. I had no idea. And I feel a little embarrassed to actually acknowledge that because one, I wasn't listening to the symptoms and the signs that my body was telling me. Two, the information was right there. But I found myself a pretty like aware and in tuned person. But I wasn't getting any, I like call them hits of like information or knowledge that I'm like, oh, maybe that's me. But as I went down the rabbit hole and finding out all these symptoms, it was wild and actually really relieved to find that I wasn't crazy. And that's, I think, the hardest thing that I want to express in this message is that I was really afraid and I was really alone going through this process. And I honestly just had said that in my mind and how I was going through life is I was just stressed. I'm going to do it with the best I can. I'm going to manage it. And I was managing it pretty well with my hormones. Nothing too crazy. I had some like tools in my back pocket and I was getting my blood work often, but then my body couldn't sustain it. You know, my motto is work hard, play hard. Like everything's about hard and getting it better and doing it right and being intentional, like not so much about being perfectionist about how to take care of my health, but really intentional on how I wanted to be. But that changed really drastically in the last 6 months. So, you know, and the stressors have been the same. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of stressors haven't relieved. They just over time, and that is also what I've learned is, you know, we're as humans, we're not supposed to go through stress in like a full stint of that length of period of time. You know, we're easy to adapt to stress, but then we got to come back down. So I've learned just so much about stress, about cortisol, about your nervous system. And I think that was probably one of the scariest pieces is how they're really tied together. And fundamentally, and what I've learned, and now that I know this, I'm just so floored that my hormones were really a big foundation of a lot of these things. And this isn't just to talk about hormones. This is so much bigger than that I didn't see and scared me quite a bit. Is I changed rapidly from, you know, just pressing on, kind of doing my thing, kind of having these ups and downs of maintaining my stress, maintaining my work-life balance kind of thing. And was still like actually pretty happy. Was still pretty content about like how life was. I'm a pretty optimistic person. And then come January, my labs were showing really, really high signs of inflammation and stress, which I'm like, well, nothing's really changed, but my body was kind of showing up in that way. So then I did a stress test. I did all these tests. Well, it wasn't fast enough because my body was already like, no, I'm done. I went from, just sustaining to being completely depleted. And what I mean by that is it happened pretty quickly, the amount of time my life really kind of changed. And I'm getting emotional because it was quite scary, but I just had these different little, and it was super inconsistent. And that's what I think was the most alarming part. And it's what I've learned about being in perimenopause, or premenopause, is they're very subtle. So they're not like yelling at you and alarming you. They're just like, that was weird. But what I really was really loud for me was I was getting really interesting, scary anxiety. I've had anxiety in the past, and I knew those were why and all that, different stressors in my life. But these were different. They were louder. I was waking up in the middle of the night. I was already dealing with sleep, so that wasn't new. But I was now not sleeping for 3 days in a row. I'd start having insomnia. Then I found a provider to help me get into my sleep better. So then once I was getting my sleep registered, I went to the Amen clinic. I got my brain tested. I honestly thought I was having a nervous break. I was so exhausted. I couldn't take care of my normal health routine, which was very basic. I couldn't get out of bed, but yet I couldn't sleep. When I did sleep, I was having like sleep paralysis where I couldn't actually get out of my sleep. So then I'd wake up and I'd be so overwhelmed and I'd just start crying and like, am I losing my mind? I literally thought I was going crazy. And then I don't sleep, then I can't move, then I don't eat well, and then it's just a terrible cycle. And I really was afraid. So when my nervous system failed and I was super sleep deprived, I ended up getting like tremors. I was getting handshakes. And then one day as I was driving, I thought I was having a stroke. I lost vision in my left eye. Lost feeling in my arm, which had never happened before because just the tingling in my fingers would happen. I ended up getting admitted to the hospital and they put me in emergency. My blood pressure was super high. I was still shaking. I still had loss of vision. And I was like, I'm like, something's really wrong. So they do, the CT scan, they're checking, making sure I don't have, just in case I'm having a stroke. So wild. The MD in there, and they were lovely. The whole clinic was lovely. They did all the things with me. He literally started asking me questions about me. And when I left, he literally told me that I basically like a pat on the head. You need just to manage your stress. You're perfectly healthy. And I was like, I'm so unwell and I'm so afraid that answer is not helpful. So that was one rabbit hole. Then the next rabbit hole, I did like brain scans. I thought there was something neurologically wrong with me because of the hand tremors, just trying to find pieces of it. Went to the Amen clinic. They were lovely. Same thing. They're like leaning more into depression. They don't promote SSRIs because they are working on brain health and longevity and all that. So they, put you down these other different rabbit holes. I was doing oxygen therapy, like all the things I was doing, trying to get my sleep under wraps, working with the therapist, all this stuff. The same time I was getting these brain scans and doing all that and doing the therapy, I ended up seeing our provider and I said, I need to run my labs again, like immediately. We need to find out what's wrong. Something's really wrong. We get the blood work. I'm sitting in there getting my blood pressure and she's like, I'm going to look at your labs really quick before we had a consult. And I was already on my way to getting another test in LA. And she goes, Randee, she goes, I'm pretty sure you're in perimenopause. And I'm looking at it and I'm shaking my head. She goes, and she's wide-eyed. She is so like honed in on this. And I'm sitting there and I didn't want to ask her out loud, what does that mean? There is not enough being said about perimenopause, and it's the longest stint of hormones that women go through from 35 to 50, and with the lowest signs than premenopause and menopause. It is wild to me that we're just riding this roller coaster of emotions and feelings and all these randomly weird things that you cannot explain that happen because of your hormones. So, as talking to more people about premenopause and things, because people started asking me as I started sharing my story, one, people were really worried, but second of all, people were really identifying with, I think I might have that too. Or are you like in the middle of your kitchen wondering why you're there? Are you having this? Are you waking up at 3 a.m.? Are you having like hot flashes and all those things? It was just wild. So as I started really realizing that, yeah, this is a bigger deal and not a lot of people are talking about it, I found a lot of women aren't being treated for hormones specifically, especially with the black box being lifted from the FDA. Gynecologists are now working with testosterone, but they don't know how to prescribe it properly because they weren't, they weren't taught how to do that. This is all brand new. I shouldn't say it's brand new. In the functional medicine space, we've been doing this a long time. But now, so people are getting all this new information that's been lifted, and here we go. We can help more people without the right education, without experience, and being put on all these other things, SSRIs, you're depressed, just go home. Your levels are normal. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Not with me, but specifically, but with other women I've been talking to, they're like, yeah, they just said my progesterone was within normal. I'm like, everyone has to just throw that in the trash. Same thing with testosterone. I will tell you right now, I feel like on top of the world. And I just had my review after being on a program with Vanessa for 3 months. I haven't felt better. And I can tell you, because I have proof in my labs and I just want to scream it from the rooftops. I haven't felt this good in 4 years. So when we pull our labs, you can see all the years that has happened and all the changes in your blood work. We call it discrete data. But it's just, it compares each year what my labs have been. For the last 4 years, my cortisol has been high. And what I mean by high is not within range high, it's out of range high. Because we do a lot of optimal ranges where it's not your basic standard, from this range to this range. Everyone wants to be within the range because that's safe and that's just what we were taught. We want to do optimal. So she has me at optimal testosterone levels. I've been injecting testosterone, which has been a complete game changer. So when I first had seen her before she put me on a program and got my blood work done, it's when she said, you're in perimenopause. And she had a whole plan, but I was still having all the symptoms. So I was still really scared. I'm like, I just hope somebody finds something wrong with me, because I can't live like this. To the point, I was feeling really depressed. I really was really afraid. I couldn't work. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do all the things. So I was pretty desperate to find answers. So when Vanessa did say, this is what you have, I just trusted her in what we were going to go on this journey together with, because I really couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't keep Googling or chatting things. I needed answers like quicker. So when she put me on this program and I got to see my labs after being on a program, I've never been this optimal in literally the last 4 years. And I can honestly say I've probably been in perimenopause for the last probably 2 to 3 years. So it is pretty wild getting on the right plan, kind of knocking out everything else that are distractions in your life. And unfortunately, I had to hit rock bottom before I listened to what my body was telling me. I was doing all the things I thought I need to do. But when Vanessa really showed me and taught me the difference of where my level should be, what is optimal, not within the range, and why I'm feeling so much better and why I was feeling so badly. Yeah, my adrenals had failed. My cortisol was high. My thyroid wasn't producing. My hormones were tanked. So basically, how she was explaining it to me, every battery pack that I had in my body, fueling my system, fueling my serotonin and my dopamine, was just tanked. They had all failed. She's like, I'm surprised you're even like somewhat functioning. And I was like, honestly, I'm not really functioning. I'm sad. I'm crying a lot. I can barely move. My joints hurt. I'm exhausted, yet I can't sleep. Like I'm really worried. And I'd say it was the most stretched and most concerned I've ever been about what was going on. I knew for certain I didn't want to live like that. And I was going to ask anyone I could that I knew, that I trusted, to find more answers. What we do, and what a lot of integrative and functional medicine spaces will do, is we're pulling more labs to get the specific markers on where your progesterone, your testosterone, all those blood panels, where they are. So they will come back and you'll see it in a lab. It'll say within the range, or they'll show you from this is low and this is high. And that's what the range means. It's kind of like where you want to be. We don't go off of those markers. We go off of optimal. So everything relates to everything else in your blood work. So your cortisol will relate to this piece of your labs, or your progesterone will then, affect this part, and your testosterone will then affect this part. So they're all telling you a story. within what's going on within your body, like specifically about you, not the range, not your average 40-year-old. There's just no way to put everybody in a category like that. So to think of it as optimal is really specific to your lifestyle, how well you are, your genetics. I can't imagine women who have been feeling like this for years and are not getting support or getting that diagnosis. You're within range. Go home and just take care of your stress. It's like, yeah, okay. I got like, those just don't just disappear. You can't just get rid of your kids or get rid of your husband or get rid of your business. Like those just don't go out the window. You got to figure out how to manage those differently. This whole idea of stress has been a really wild journey for me. I was removing things in my life that I thought were adding stress. And I think it's just such a broad word that I think is a really personal journey, honestly, because I've gone down that journey about it being more in alignment. It's not about doing more or doing less, because I loved all the things I was doing. And did have a pretty balanced lifestyle, but I was still really stressed. And what I mean by that is what it would reflect on my labs is my cortisol is always high. So we measure that as a sign of stress. And there's certain patterns that follow with cortisol. You should have it in the morning, different flows. And a lot of the times it's, for me personally, it was spiking at night, and then I couldn't fall asleep and I couldn't stay asleep. Or it would spike in the morning at 3 a.m. is a typical one, where now I'm like awake and like fighting all the battles in my head of like, what's happening? I'm in the middle of sleeping. There is a better way to maintain and treat your cortisol levels based off what your hormones are doing. And I think that has been probably one of the biggest learning experiences for me, is how much hormones helps balance out and help with my cortisol. And then more than that, being able to get enough sleep to then be making better choices for myself in how I handle stress and how I want to deal with stress. I think stress comes from being out of alignment, to be really honest. I'm not going to not work. I like to travel and do all the things, but I wouldn't consider those are stressors. I would consider those being things I enjoy. In the last 4 years that I was just maintaining, I knew that there was an underlying, like, I wasn't living joyful, intentional. Like, I still felt dull. I'll be really honest. And then these last 6 months, being depleted as much and how hard it hit me, it was really a cry for help of like, I need to change now. Like, it was right in my face that there was really nothing I could do about it, But when I think back in those last 4 years, that I knew I didn't feel well, and I knew I had a lot of stressors. It sounds so silly to say, if you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling like yourself, like, no one, here's what I think. No one's got time for that. We're doing the best that we can, and I think that's great. But honestly, you need to check in with yourself, and that little one-liner, I can tell you, it was the pattern that has stuck the most consistent within these last 4 years. I just don't feel like myself. And now I never want to lose the way I feel now. I never want to lose her again, because I feel so excited and alive. And I have not felt like this in so long. So yeah, it just gives me shivers just thinking about it, because what I've learned is that, again, not just hormones, but if your body could get what it needs, and if you could slow down to listen and actually make a relationship with yourself to hear those symptoms, don't ignore little signs. You're going to be your own guide in where and why you think you should see who you should see, and you got to make it known and take, I guess you could say, responsibility. Otherwise, it's gonna affect you in a bigger way. I had so much support, to take care of things in my life, and I'd asked for a lot of help. I became really vulnerable and was just like crying for help. And many people stepped up for me. Many people stepped up to help. I got things removed off of my to-do list. Everything was fine around the house. My house didn't explode and my life, upside down. But it's because I asked for help. I asked for what I needed. And I think that's hard for a lot of women, because we're doing all the things. Being a woman that likes to be on the go and likes projects and all the things, I don't resonate with a lot of words that are out there, like burnout, stress. all those things, because it kind of goes against what fuels me. I naturally love working on a project. I love seeing things to come to fruition. Some people would say I work too hard. But for me, I find a lot of joy in being motivated, ambitious. I love working on things and I like being efficient and I like to go have fun. So I don't want to apologize for that lifestyle. And with that, there is a responsibility of taking care of your health. And I think I did take it for granted being in my 30s and creating all things and being able to handle it. And then things change. And I just wanted my body to keep up with where I was going and how I was doing things. But it wasn't. And there were signs that it wasn't. Getting support is necessary, not when you just feel bad or when you've tanked, but throughout the journey. And I think that's what's so cool about what we do at Attorney Health Partners is we do follow-ups every 3-6 months, often on every patient. I know what I like to do for health, but I also want someone that I can lean on that says, hey, I'm seeing this, we need to do this. And I think that's what our providers have done a great job at doing, is that they care so much about patients, enough to say, hey, have you looked at this marker? We should look at this, without the patient just coming in and saying, how I'm doing. Do I get an A plus, C minus? They're saying, well, what about these factors? What's changed in your life? Like, it is that relationship of seeing where your labs have been, where you are now, and where we want to go. And being able to, one, have that relationship, but having it to be accessible. If you kind of pop around to different providers, you're starting from scratch. I even met with Vanessa and she's like, great, you are super optimal and now we're going to change some more things. And I'm okay with that, because she wants me at a good level, not like up here and then down here. We're not doing this game. She wants to find a place where I can stay and still be thriving. And we can do that telemedicine. We can do that over a phone call. She can send notes over, our EMR software, just checking in. Our staff is fantastic, knowing that we're all in alignment with your goals. Learned a lot, and it'll be my new mission to help other women to learn about this and take their health serious now. And I guess serious is even a strong word. Just don't take it for granted, because it will change. It changes. And we're super adaptable as women. So adapt to your health, adapt to your hormones, adapt to your age, because you don't have to feel like crap, and that you're just gonna push through. Like, you don't have to push through. I think that's been the biggest piece, is that's what I've done and it's worked. So then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna push through again. I'm gonna push through again. Oh, look at me, I'm conquering it, I'm killing it, I'm pushing through. And then when you can't push through anymore and you don't have the tools, it's like, now what do I do? And I don't think it has to be so drastic if you're learning about these things as you go. You really don't have to go through this alone. And there's a lot of help and a lot of support. We will be having an event coming up about specifically around, just women's longevity and health, and supporting us through this life and this journey of health that I think we're all navigating alone. And you don't have to do that alone. You can get support. You can ask questions. You can make moves. You don't have to make moves, but as long as we're, creating awareness around the topic, I think that in itself can make a lot of change. Perimenopause looks different for a lot of women, and I don't think that the symptoms really connect to what they're actually going through. And especially when it comes to hormones. Hormones play a big impact on how you're navigating through perimenopause. And I think the symptoms don't always show women or relate to women that they could be in perimenopause or that has anything to do with their hormones.